Welcome to Griffonomics.
Glad to be here.
Today we are bringing you an investigative inflection analysis of uniQure. That's trading under the ticker QURE.
Right, Qure.
Exactly. And we have a pretty formidable stack of sources for today's analysis. We are pulling directly from uniQure's 2025 Form 10K, their Q4 earnings call transcripts, some very recent clinical data presentations, and this is the heavy part, a highly detailed batch of expert analyst reports.
Yeah, it's a lot of specialized data to synthesize today. But the narrative here, it's incredibly compelling. We are looking at a biotechnology firm that has experienced just a profound shift in its very identity over the last few months.
And that is exactly the mission of this deep dive. We are exploring uniQure's fundamental transformation. Over a very, very short period, they've gone from being viewed as a near-term commercial gene therapy play-like, practically on the cusp of market launch, into a much longer-term clinical development story.
It's a massive pivot.
It really is. And for you, the listener, whether you are actively tracking biotech investments, studying major regulatory shifts, or maybe you're just fascinated by the frontier of genetic medicine, this deep dive is going to provide a masterclass in how quickly a company's trajectory can change.
It really serves as a perfect case study in the sheer volatility of the biotech sector. You can have groundbreaking science and deeply persuasive clinical data, but if the regulatory winds shift, your entire business model just has to adapt overnight.
So true. Let's start with the foundation of that science. Just for those who don't track their pipeline daily, uniQure is a pioneer in the gene therapy space.
Very much so.
Their core business model revolves around a proprietary gene silencing platform. They call it miQure, and they utilize an AAV platform.
Adeno-associated virus vectors.
Right, adeno-associated virus vectors, which is specifically engineered to degrade mutated, disease-causing genes while completely avoiding the toxic off-target effects that have, plagued other gene silencing therapies in the past.
And we should point out, they are not just some theoretical early-stage company operating on sheer potential. They have a proven track record.
Definitely.
uniQure actually produced the first approved gene therapy in the Western world. Currently, their major approved asset is Hemgenix, which is a functional cure for hemophilia B.
Yeah, though it is important to note for their revenue structure that they sold the global commercial rights for Hemgenix to CSL Behring.
Right, but they still earn royalties on those sales, which we'll get into later.
Exactly. So Hemgenix proves their fundamental science works. But the absolute crown jewel of their current pipeline is an investigational asset called AMT-130. This is their lead clinical candidate, and it holds the distinction of being the very first AAV gene therapy to enter clinical development for Huntington's disease.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Huntington's is a notoriously difficult, fatal neurodegenerative disease.
It's devastating.
It really is. It's caused by a genetic stutter that produces a toxic protein and that leads to the progressive breakdown of nerve cells in the brain. It severely impacts a person's motor skills, their emotions, their cognitive abilities.
And in the tragic reality of this space is that right now there are absolutely no disease-modifying treatments available.
None. It is a severe, unmet medical need. From a strategic perspective, whoever can successfully bring a therapy to market is looking at a multi-billion-dollar, completely untapped landscape.
Which brings us to the clinical data they reported recently. And looking at the source material, the numbers are striking.
Yeah, they really are.
We are talking about their 3-year phase 12 data for AMT-130. They reported a statistically significant 75% slowing of disease progression.
75%.
Yeah, measured by a metric called CUHDRS. For those who don't track neurology trials, that is the gold standard composite scale. It's used to measure a patient's motor skills, cognitive function, and daily living abilities. And on top of that, they saw a 60% slowing of decline in their total functional capacity, or TFC, meaning patients essentially maintain their independence much longer.
Those numbers are historically persuasive. Analysts across the board have called this the most clinically compelling data set in the history of Huntington's disease research.
I've had a doubt.
When you are dealing with a fatal disease with a 100% mortality rate and 0 existing treatments, a 75% slowing of progression is a beacon of hope for both the patient community and, of course, the investors backing the science.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because logic dictates that historically persuasive data should mean a relatively smooth path to approval.
You would think so.
But instead, uniQure has experienced severe regulatory whiplash. Back in November 2024, the company and its investors firmly believed they had FDA alignment for an accelerated approval pathway.
Right. Their plan was to use an external natural history control.
Exactly. Basically, they were going to compare their clinical trial patients to data from over 30,000 tracked patients in the Enroll-HD database, rather than using a traditional placebo group.
Which has historically been a valid pragmatic approach for rare fatal diseases.
Yeah.
Recruiting a traditional placebo group for a rare terminal illness can be highly difficult.
Because no one wants the placebo when they have a fatal disease.
Exactly. But following a Type A meeting in January 2026, the FDA abruptly reversed its stance. And just to give some context, a Type A meeting is essentially a break glass in case of emergency sit-down with regulators to resolve a stalled development program.
It's serious.
Very. And in that meeting, the FDA formally stated that the Phase 12 data, when compared to that external control database, was no longer sufficient to provide primary evidence of effectiveness.
Just a complete 180-degree turn. So looking at the analyst's notes, what exactly is the FDA demanding now?
The FDA's new mandate requires uniQure to conduct a prospective, randomized, double-blind, sham surgery-controlled Phase 3 trial.
Wait, sham surgery? For brain surgery?
Yes.
Are you saying they require a patient to be put under anesthesia just to drill superficial holes in their skull without giving them the drug?
Yes. It sounds like something out of a medical history book, but it is a very real, current protocol. In a sham-controlled trial for this specific therapy, the control group, the patients who receive a placebo must undergo 10 to 12 hours of anesthesia.
That is just wild.
And then surgeons drill burr holes into their skulls solely to mimic the surgical delivery of the gene therapy. This ensures the patients and the evaluating doctors remain completely blinded to who actually received the active treatment.
That is an incredibly harsh physical reality for a patient to endure, just to serve as a statistical baseline.
It is. And it highlights a profound friction point in modern clinical trial design. Look, the FDA is prioritizing absolute statistical purity and rigorous evidentiary standards, which is their mandate.
Right, that is their job.
On the other hand, patient advocates in uniQure's management argue that imposing this level of physical risk on patients who have a slowly progressive, fatal neurodegenerative disease with no other options is highly problematic. It presents a complex clinical reality, and practically speaking, it completely altered uniQure's timeline to market.
And if that multi-year regulatory delay wasn't enough of a hurdle, we have to talk about the market event that followed. Looking at the charts, in February 2026, uniQure's stock plunged roughly 30% practically overnight.
30%. And the most notable aspect of that drop is that it was triggered by an event entirely outside of the company's direct clinical results or corporate filings.
That is the wildest part of this whole story. The catalyst for this crash was a CNBC interview given by the newly appointed FDA Commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary.
Right.
During this broadcast, he explicitly criticized rare disease therapies that require burr holes in the skull, stating flatly that they show no benefit.
And as analysts of the source material, our role here is to strictly observe the market mechanics and the factual timeline without taking any political position on the current administration or endorsing their broader regulatory philosophies. You're just looking at the facts.
Total neutral.
What we must focus on is the direct, measurable market reaction to those specific words broadcast on financial television. The market heard the FDA commissioner say burr holes and no benefit, and investors immediately panicked. They assumed he was signaling the death knell for uniQure's AMT-130 program.
But the analyst reports we are looking at point out a glaring contradiction in that market reaction, don't they?
What's fascinating here is the sheer velocity and danger of rumors in biotech investing. Analysts quickly pointed out that the market's reaction represents a significant misattribution.
A case of mistaken identity.
Exactly. AMT-130 has demonstrated clear clinical benefit, that 75% slowing of disease progression we just discussed. Furthermore, AMT-130 is still under active review by the FDA. It hasn't been rejected.
So who was he talking about?
The counter-narrative, heavily supported by industry analysts, is that Dr. Makary was almost certainly referring to a completely different, recently rejected drug from a competitor, specifically RegSBio's RGX-121.
Wow. So a likely misinterpretation of a television interview wiped out hundreds of millions of dollars in market cap in a matter of hours.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates the psychology of the market. When a company is already in a vulnerable regulatory position due to a delayed Phase 3 mandate, Investors just shoot first and ask questions later.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because with a multi-year delay suddenly on the table, the immediate question for investors changes from when do they launch to can they afford to wait?
That's the billion-dollar question.
You're right. That forces us to look right at their cash runway. Let's pivot to their 2025 financials.
So for the fiscal year 2025, uniQure reported total revenue of $16.1 million. And the vast majority of that, $15.9 million, was driven entirely by their license revenue.
Specifically, the royalties they earn from CSL Behring on the global sales of Hemgenix.
Pres-
But looking at their 10K, one thing jumps right off the page. Their contract manufacturing revenue dropped to absolute zero. What happened there?
That reflects a strategic operational pivot. Back in July 2024, uniQure made the decision to completely divest their commercial manufacturing facility in Lexington, Massachusetts. They sold it to a company called Genizin.
Okay.
By selling that facility, uniQure eliminated its internal manufacturing cash burn and reduced its global workforce by roughly 65%. They transitioned into what the industry calls an agent model.
Meaning they now subcontract the manufacturing of Hemgenix to Genizin to fulfill their supply obligations, which turns uniQure into a pure-play clinical stage developer.
Exactly. It preserved capital, though it does introduce third-party reliance risks. I mean, if their manufacturing partner experiences a delay, uniQure is still on the hook. But the primary goal of that restructuring was fortifying their balance sheet.
And fortify it they did. They ended 2025 with $622.5 million in cash, cash equivalents, and investment securities.
That is a formidable liquidity position.
It is a fortress, but we do have to look at how they built it.
Right. They achieved that position by heavily diluting their shareholders. They raised $404.2 million through public offerings throughout 2025.
That dilution was painful for early investors?
It was painful,
Yeah.
but it bought the company's survival. Management projects that this cash buffer extends their operational runway well into the second half of 2029.
Which means they can actually afford to run this expensive multi-year phase 3 trial if they are forced to. But as I read through the debt obligations in the filings, there is a very specific catch regarding their agreement with Hercules Capital.
Yes, the venture debt facility.
Yeah.
uniQure has a $175 million aggregate facility with Hercules, and currently they have $50 million drawn.
Okay.
But here is the critical detail. Access to the next $100 million tranche of that capital is strictly contingent on achieving a biologics license application, or BLA, approval for AMT-130 prior to June 2027.
A BLA is essentially the formal application to the FDA to market the drug. And with the FDA now demanding a multi-year phase 3 trial, hitting a BLA approval by June 2027 is essentially impossible, isn't it?
It is entirely off the table, which means that $100 million debt tranche is no longer accessible.
Wow.
This makes that $622.5 million cash pile even more crucial, because it is the only runway they have left to weather this storm.
So AMT-130 is delayed. How is the rest of the pipeline doing? Unfortunately, the sources outlined significant turbulence in uniQure's secondary clinical assets as well. Both their AMT-191 program for Fabry disease and their AMT-152 program for ALS are currently sitting on safety pauses.
This brings us back to the systemic challenges of AAV platforms. In the clinical trial world, safety is paramount.
Always.
For the Fabry disease program, they had to pause dosing in their mid and high dose cohorts due to dose-limiting toxicities, specifically asymptomatic grade 3 liver enzyme elevations. Liver toxicity is a known persistent hurdle in AAV gene therapies.
And what about the ALS program?
For the ALS program, enrollment was voluntarily paused after a severe adverse event involving dorsal root ganglia toxicity. The dorsal root ganglia is a cluster of neurons in the spine, and toxicity there can cause severe sensory issues.
It is a tough narrative when your lead asset is stalled by regulators and your backups are paused for safety evaluations. But there is one bright spot in the pipeline we need to mention.
Yes, there is.
Their AMT-260 program for temporal lobe epilepsy is advancing. In fact, the very first patient treated in that trial demonstrated a 92% reduction in seizure frequency over 5 months.
That is a remarkable initial data point. Granted, it is just an N of a single patient. But it provides a necessary glimmer of clinical hope for their broader AAV technology platform while their other programs navigate these safety protocols.
And with the US FDA creating such a formidable roadblock for their lead asset, uniQure isn't just sitting idle, they're playing global regulatory chess.
That is what the analysts are calling the ex-US pivot. Because the FDA's mandate only applies within the United States, uniQure is aggressively accelerating their discussions with the EMA in Europe and the MHRA in the United Kingdom.
Right.
Their strategic hope is that these European regulatory agencies will take a more pragmatic approach. If the EMA or MHRA accepts the existing external natural history controls from the Enroll-HD database, uniQure could potentially secure an earlier approval overseas.
This would allow them to begin generating commercial revenue in Europe while they navigate the long Phase 3 trial in the U.S.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the breathtaking clinical data, the sudden FDA reversal, the market panic over a television interview, the safety pauses, and that fortified balance sheet, what is the final verdict from the experts?
Synthesizing the analyst reports, uniQure is currently rated as a speculative hold, or perhaps a speculative buy strictly for highly patient investors with a significant tolerance for volatility.
And why is that the consensus? Why not just sell the stock if the delays are projected to last years?
Because of the balance sheet. That $622.5 million cash runway provides a very real safety floor.
Right.
It protects the company against any immediate existential threat. They had the capital to keep the lights on until 2029. However, it remains a hold because the immediate upside is severely capped. You have a distinct lack of near-term U.S. catalysts, a daunting and expensive FDA Phase 3 mandate ahead, and active safety pauses on the secondary pipeline assets. You simply have to wait years for the story to play out.
And for you listening, this deep dive is incredibly instructive. It proves a fundamental reality of the biotech sector. Having historically persuasive clinical data for a fatal disease does not guarantee a smooth path to market.
It really doesn't.
Ultimately, maintaining strict regulatory alignment and building an ironclad balance sheet are what actually dictate a company's survival in this industry.
This raises an important question, one that extends far beyond just uniQure's pipeline. As gene therapies advance and begin targeting increasingly complex terminal rare diseases, how long can our regulatory bodies rely on traditional trial designs?
It's a profound dilemma.
It is. If you are a patient with a fatal disease and you have absolutely no other medical options, the clinical logistics of asking you to undergo 12 hours of brain surgery just to serve as a statistical baseline for a placebo group becomes a profound friction point. Navigating the balance between statistical purity and the realities of human clinical care is, without a doubt, the next great frontier for medical regulation.
Risk defined, portfolio protected.